Yeah. Basically, I believe that Sharia law is a system that is more consistent with human nature, indeed addressing human nature. So, as you believe that liberalism is also the best system for mankind, and the communists believe communism is the best system for mankind. So, if we're asked, would you like to see all mankind under this system? And I said, well, obviously, we'd all of us say the same, because if we didn't, then we don't believe in our own system. And that's what everyone answers. But suddenly it's really bad for Muslims to say that. Oh, you're being intolerant. You can't. Well, I can argue that liberals are intolerant. You're so intolerant, you don't even let our own countries go rule under Sharia. You support dictators who will do anything to talk
I think it was a yes. But I mean, it's certainly not the case to say, for example, that liberalism somehow forces itself on people. It's a very clear part of a liberal approach to life in a shared society, that people have the freedom to pursue their own religions and non-religious beliefs and to govern themselves as long as they don't harm others in whatever way they wish. So I think it's not a fair attack to say that liberalism is somehow comparable to another system of law that imposes itself in that way.
Well, tell it to the American Marines now, coming to liberate Iraq for freedom and democracy under bombs.
Well, I won't, because that's got nothing to do with it. I'm talking about liberalism as a way of living together in a shared society.
I have a question for Father Frank, if you don't mind. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, said in that rather long and unintelligible speech about Sharia law. Can you clarify in very simple words what he was getting at and what you think he was getting at, and how do you evaluate?
Well, the Archbishop of Canterbury is not, although I do admire his piety, his spirituality, is not a man whom I would like normally to be interpreted, want to interpret, because, again, he's so dense. I actually defended him, which doesn't often happen, because we are, in a way, at the opposite ends of the theological spectrum. He's a liberal Catholic, I'm a conservative Anglo-Catholic. But on that particular occasion, I was actually at the time living in the Middle East. I was in the Gulf, in Qatar, in Doha. I was interviewed by Al Jazeera, and I defended the Archbishop. What he was trying to say was that the law, in a way, must reflect the developments in society, and insofar as Britain is, to some extent, affected, or they are an important Muslim minority, some of those values of that minority should be reflected in the law. Now, this is not, I mean, it's funny, I should be an apologist for Sharia, but in a way, essentially, I would like to say that I understand, I have no problem with accepting, recognizing the Islamic position, because Islam has a superiority complex. There is no question about that. It believes itself to be final revelation. But Christianity has no doubts about its own truth. So in a sense, although we may be a little more coy, a little more diplomatic in expressing, there is no question we also believe we have the truth. And coming back to Paul's question, I don't want to duck it. I think there is an example already, for example, in this country. Take the example of the Catholic Church. There is something called the Holy Wheel, the Sacra Rota, which grants annulment to marriages which have taken place in this country to Catholics on the basis of its own rules and regulations. And so you could argue, how could a tribunal which sits in Rome actually have consequence and influence on what happens in this country? Well, it does happen. It's not a perfect analogy. So similarly, it may well be that some degree of voluntary, already Muslims do abide to some extent by Sharia principles of voluntarism. So if English law were to some extent to recognize that, I would not see anything per se objectionable, provided, and we know the Archbishop was not talking about chopping off hands or anything like that. He was talking about matters of family, right of family law. So per se, I would myself defend him on that.
Thank you, Frank. Robin wanted to say something.
I think, first of all, English law does actually recognise the right of, say, business people who are Muslims to have their contracts adjudicated under Sharia principles. But that is on the basis of a situation where people have actually agreed to that and signed up to an arbitration or adjudication decision to be made valid in English laws, and the agreement to arbitrate being valid, you can choose any system of rules to be your system of rules for the adjudication to take place. I think where the problem emerges, though, isn't where people are choosing, it's where, and this is what happens with the legal system after all, where the choice is imposed upon them. In other words, they are required to deal with their disputes, say under Sharia law. That would be something that we would be totally opposed to. And that's when you get from a situation where people are consenting to it, to a situation where people are finding it imposed on them. And you simply can't have multiple legal systems operating within the same territory. It doesn't work.
In response to Robin's point, I think you can have multiple legal systems operating. I think historically you did. The Ottomans had the millet system, and of course Islam had a concept of multiculturalism where every community had their own law system that they could refer to. And they could just opt out of it if they want to and go to see the Islamic court, which according to a lot of historians, most of them actually did. And I advise you to check the history on this. It's a very fascinating situation. It's the Islamic concept of multiculturalism. I think my only lesson, I guess, the only aspect of Islam I like to bring for Britain is maybe this one aspect to solve your multiculturalism problem. You have a multiculturalism problem because some people, they believe in freedom, but they also believe in their own culture. And so based on their taboos, they will now hypocritically go against freedom and liberalism to impose their cultures on others. So I would say that the best way to deal with this is the Islamic multiculturalism, and I would, I would be very much agreeable to be given, to be treated as a dhimmi, if you know the Islamic concept of this word, a person under protected contract, under a British state, whereby I'll be respected, whereby my livelihood will be protected, whereby I could practice my faith, I could go and worship as I please, and no one would question our women who they say, well, we believe women's rights, women should choose, but you women, if you wear the burqa, we're going to ban it. See, this is the hypocrisy of this democracy. It is the hypocrisy of those who claim to espouse freedom and liberalism and so on. And I'm not talking about Andrew. I know he's consistent, Frank is consistent, but some people over there, maybe with the exception of Robin, are inconsistent. They say, we believe in democracy and freedom, but you must restrict your freedoms. Isn't it, did not Rousseau say, I hate what you have to say, but I'll defend to death your right to say it? No. Voltaire.
I'm Voltaire to say it.
It's all French to me.
Adam is bursting to get his
I've got us talking nonsense, and he knows he's talking nonsense. Does it really think that democracy is saying that everything you can do, everything you ever like? Doesn't democracy say, will you drive on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, you can choose? And we all know there have to be rules, there have to be regulations. The whole point of democracy is, can you extend that freedom as far as is reasonable? There are occasions when my freedom imposed on somebody else's, so society has to step in and says, no, you can't. So it's an old chestnut I have to look at. Every time I debate it, he throws his run out. How can you ban something in the name of freedom? Well, actually, society does ban some things in the name of freedom. It's actually recently decided, in the name of freedom, to ban smoking. I personally don't object with it, I don't agree with it, but that's what they've decided to do. Society is able to take these views. That's what it does. It doesn't stop us being a democracy. So come on, Abdullah, let's move on from this cigar.
I think the humanist has also got to speak.
I think it's also worth pointing out that the burqa has not been banned. I mean, to say that there's a hypocrisy in democracy because you say you want freedom and then you ban something and ban the burqa, I just remind you, it hasn't actually been banned, right?
All right. Basically, then why are we having this debate? We shouldn't have any debate on the ban. In France, they're going to have a debate on the ban of burqa. Why have it? If you're not going to do it, then why have the debate? Why have this voting for in Switzerland, whether people can, of their own free will and choice, of their own funds, build buildings in the shape of as